Welcome to the Listening Machine podcast, episode 6. Hey, Subbu, how are you?
Good. We have a guest this week.
Yeah, before we get into the guest, let's start with our the initial rant about the World Cup. So we are in the semifinals. I think it was an amazing match with West Indies. I think finally Sanju Samson showed his true skills. What do you think?
I
I mean,
saw that.
who do you think will reach the finals?
I don't know. I don't want to say any predictions today, especially with all what is going around. But I saw Sanju
Mhm.
Samson innings, and then I also saw Gautam Gambhir's post-match presentation as well. So let's
Yeah,
leave
of
it
course.
there and then go ahead.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the New Zealand South Africa one, but I somehow feel New Zealand always, I mean, elevates their game in ICC events, and I'm kind of probably guessing that they will probably eliminate South Africa. That's my guess, but you never know, right? So
Let's
we'll
see.
see. Okay, so we have a guest today. I'm happy to introduce, super excited to introduce him, Jay Prasad, founder and CEO of ExaThought Consulting. Welcome, Jay. You are the first
Thank you so much.
guest on our new podcast show.
I'm glad to be here. Glad to be reconnecting back with all of our friends and looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, so
So,
as
do you want to
yeah,
just
go ahead.
intro him about his company and what they do and stuff like that? Just to give a
Uh,
background.
I can do a brief introduction. I think I'll leave it to Jay, who does a very good job of doing that. So Jay is the founder and CEO of ExaThought Consulting. They are into premium IT consulting and also developing apps for a lot of well-known companies, especially focusing on customer experience in the automotive and pharma industry. So Jay, I hope I got it right. So
Yeah,
please feel
yeah.
free to add on
No, so I
how
think
long
you
you've been
covered
there.
that.
I know I may not do justice how long you've been in the industry, and if you want to add something, you want to talk about your co-founder Girish. Yeah, please feel free.
Sure, Subbu. Thank you so much for giving the opportunity. I and Subbu Jay go a long way back. In fact, that's kind of how
In digital age, it is centuries away.
true, true. So it's been 25 years, Subbu, now that I think about it, or 26 years, right? So it has been crazy that, and it's been an interesting, fun run. First of all, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be a part of these interesting conversations. I think you already told about ExaThought, so I have nothing more to add. We are a consulting firm specifically focused on customer experience problems, and we specifically focused again on life sciences and pharma industry. I had ExaThought was started about 8 years ago, and as you mentioned, I and Girish got together. Girish again is another passionate engineer. He actually again has been in the industry for about 25 years now. I and Girish had a chance to work together at Target, and that's kind of how we came back and started ExaThought together. Our goal is to just solve interesting technology problems. Really, that's kind of the goal with which we started, and we've been having fun. That's kind of what I can say about where we are right now.
I still
Jay.
remember the day, the meeting we had after you started in
Yeah,
Kailash Prabhat in Jayanagar.
exactly,
I remember the
exactly.
day still very well.
Right. I think it was really the four of us again, right? If you remember, it was actually me, you, Subuke, and then Girish.
Yeah, he was there as well.
Fun. So time really flies by. It's been 8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what we want to talk about, Jay, today is like we started this show specifically focusing on just on everything about artificial intelligence, right? So we have done 5 episodes. We just warming up. I mean, we have want to go much more deeper on this. So essentially, we talked about LLMs and AI in the creative space. And I don't know if you got a chance to listen to previous episodes. It was all about that. So
Otherwise, it's a
we
good start. You can start now.
Sure, gentlemen. I'll certainly do that. Yes, exactly. I've been
so we'll
actually
do the
having
plug for the show at the end,
on the show
where
at
all
the
you can
yes,
listen.
absolutely.
Oh, miss. So, what we wanted to talk with you, since you have been in this space, and we all from an IT services background, right? We all made our careers in that space, in software and all that. And we see disruption going across everywhere. I mean, not just in software, it is now disrupting many of the white collar jobs, right? From all the other different verticals, whether it is legal, whether it is accounting, you just name it, right?
Right.
So we just want to keep the focus today, since you being a pioneer in this space in IT services, and you've been running a company successfully for 8+ years. Let's start with what has been your discovery when this exploded I think in the last 1 year or 1.5 years or so, right? I would say the last 1 year would have been you've seen significant updates after the Google Gemini and maybe the deep sea came in and all that.
Right.
So the traditional IT services model, I mean, you are the expert at it. Like, there are different ways. You have the time and material model. You have fixed projects. How is this? Is that model going to significantly change with AI coming in? Let's start with that. I mean, yeah.
Sure. So I think, as I was telling you, I think all very deep questions, and I hopefully will be able to make justice to the conversations today. And I'll first of all try to debunk one disclaimer you said. I'm the expert in IT services by far, not by a long shot, right? So if you really think about it, I actually started.
I think it's time we should start calling ourselves that. Everybody's doing
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Let's start doing it.
Well,
We're too humble to
I
not
mean,
to
with
do
all
that.
the bald heads and gray hair we have, I think we can call that ourselves that, right?
I hope that was the only qualification required for us to call ourselves experts. Right?
We have seen from client server to
Exactly.
LLMs.
And it's mostly
We
like
can,
monolithic to client server to 3 tier to
yeah,
end tier.
exactly.
Right? If you think about it, yeah.
We have all the
and
rights to call ourselves an
so
expert.
actually, my first programming language that I wrote code in was Fox Pro. You can imagine. That's how
Yeah,
far
same
back.
with me.
That's how
Same with
far
me.
I
So
go back.
I'm not going to say disclose that because that will show my age.
Hopefully you don't say punch cards or something. Right. Right. So I think, but quite interestingly, but in this just coming back on the topic, so in fact, it has been a very interesting journey to say the least, right? So I've also gone through various range of emotions from the time AI has hit us, right? It is certainly a step change in the way we do business. Definitely, it has completely changed the way we look at things, the way we do things, right? So I've also gone through intrigue, surprise, fear, right? Anxiety, and perhaps now excitement, right? Like I've also crossed through many different sort of phases, like most of us actually go through, because when actually we saw the first ChatGPT come out, and it's like really put a small question. In fact, my first question that actually I asked to ChatGPT was explain Advaita to a 5-year-old. That's essentially what I said. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm throwing a curveball, right? But then, quite interestingly, the answer that came back was very phenomenal, right? And that kind of really realized, right? That was probably the point for me that I crossed over to say, you know what, intelligence is here, and many forms of. I remember Google Bard's presentation and some of those particular presentation in 26, 27, and while those particular indications were there, it was really the advent of ChatGPT that kind of changed things, right? From there on, as you said, I also went through my own journey as a professional and as an individual to be able to really understand that. But over the last year, we've also tried to really understand how AI can actually help us in various different ways, right? So initially, it was a sense of doubt to really see whether it could help us or not help us. And at the initial low-code, no-code platforms, I remember actually generating the code and opening the file, and the entire code was in one line, right? I'm like, I don't think we can use this these systems to be able to build applications to where it is today, right? So we actually, even within ExaThought, we use tools like ExaThought, Cursor, Anti-Gravity, where I actually, when I start to write code there, in fact, currently I see that the level of code structure and the level of speed with which we can actually deliver solutions is really accelerated, right? And that really is what really excites us, right? So from a perspective of that being something which we thought would go against us, to be able to really, in my mind, I feel like it'll really help us accelerate the journey. And it definitely gives us really new, I would say, possibilities. In my mind, I think this is the time when software industry is going through the industrialization, right? I mean, you think about some of the other revolutions that was there, where the manufacturing went through, the robotic revolution and how essentially it helped accelerate the entire productivity and development within the manufacturing space. And it kind of brought a lot more certainty, it brought a lot more quality at a lower cost. I believe that that kind of industrialization is currently happening within the software industry right now, where really the likes of Cloud and Gemini and Quen and all of those things essentially are bringing that certainty and predictability. And now it feels like intelligence is democratized, right? So it really, I think whenever somebody now goes and talks about, hey, we can write good code, I suppose that's really not a differentiator anymore, right? So because everybody can write good code thanks to all of these tools and utilities, and not only code, right? You look at all aspects of software development lifecycle today. AI really influences right from beginning to the end. Like very recently, I was exploring this BMAT. I don't know if you've actually seen that. It's like breakthrough methodology for agile development. It's a very interesting open source project. You should explore that if you've not. It's quite interestingly, it has actually brought a group of 6 agents. One which is basically Mary, the analyst, and there is an architect or a developer, and then there is a tester, and you can essentially interact with it.
Which one is it? Sorry,
it's called BMAD, BMAD.
Oh, BMAD, yeah, I know,
yeah. Quite an interesting framework, right? Which kind of also tries to standardize, right? Because in the past, even prompting was a bit of a challenge, right? So if you really think about it, for you to be able to really make effective use of intelligence, you need to also be able to converse with it very well, right? So with some of these newer developments that have happened, it feels like that is also being structured and that is also being.
But my question there, Jay, is so traditionally, if you look at it, was a headcount sort of a model, right? So you have a bunch of engineers who are good at a certain language, whether you call Java or JavaScript, whatever it is, right? Is that going to change? Why I'm asking is because let's say you get a requirement for satisfying, let's say, a need from a customer on a certain language, let's say a legacy language, right? Is your team who, let's say, or the modern developers who are good at Python and JavaScript, let's say, do you think they can handle with AI tools? And can you put them on a project, let's say, to handle a Java-based project, which is a legacy 15, 20-year-old code base? What's your take on that? I mean, is that, that's been my question. So is it headcount model still relevant? Headcount in the sense, headcount by, whether you call it technology expertise, domain expertise, that is how the services model was built over a period of time, right?
Correct.
Is that crumbling?
Absolutely. I think, the paradigm is changing, right? The way the consulting business was actually being done in the past was very different from what essentially we're going to see in the future, right? As you said, I think it was already a shift from what is basically an effort-based model to an outcome-based model, right? Earlier, it was really about, as you said, I will actually drive the outcome and then you give me people. And then I will basically be responsible for ensuring that the project is being successful too. It has now moved to where, hey, here is the goal that we'd like you guys to achieve. And then you basically go back and figure out what needs to be done. And your entire success and your entire payment milestones are all really based on you being able to work with your customer to be able to deliver the business outcome, right? Things have really changed there. Now, to your question about whether the entire skill-based whatever business model or arbitrage is still relevant or not, right? It's definitely changing, as you said. Going back to my earlier point around the fact that now with all of these tools that are available at a disposal, it is very easy for us to not having to worry about the syntax, right? Or not having to worry about the code structure and all of those things. So if you are a good software developer with strong fundamentals of software design and development, it is perhaps far easier for you to be able to actually graduate from one type of language to another language. Of course, you still have to be sensitive to the nuances of that language, so it is very important. But it is certainly become easier than what it was earlier, right? So earlier, that kind of a migration was definitely harder than what it is today. So if you're someone who is able to understand the core principles of software development and understand the core principles of software design and quality, it should basically be able to help you drive that. Because right now, that's kind of where we are going, right? From being able to write the code to be able to drive these tools to be able to write the code, right? Now, even though the code is written by some of these tools, you are still the person who's raising the PR and checking in the code. So the code is still in your name, right? So you have to own that code, which means that you'll have to still understand how the code is supposed to be written, how the architecture is supposed to be done, the layers, the error logging, the design, and all of those things. The good things that you would generally do to write good software is still needed. So for you to be able to write that code, you should still be able to instruct the tools to be able to do that, right? So going back to that, you need core software design principles and understanding of the professional software development is still a most important need. But at the language level, is there portability? I think so, right? So it is definitely something that's beginning to become real, right? So we already had the notion of full stack developers earlier, but that was mostly from front end to back end. Now you can also start looking at people moving laterally to be able to do those, right? So that's, I think, is probably something that's going to happen very soon.
So let me pull Subbu into this. Yeah,
So
I think
I know I agree with whatever Jay said, but then I differ in certain areas. The traditional software services model built around a lot of, I would say, embellishments or bezels around the software development. Like actual writing of a code is like a lot more is built around that. Like in terms of when you look at it, like writing a design document or like writing a detailed PR or architecture diagrams and all that. I feel those were required because at the later point of time you wanted to have the business logic and the application logic is like documented somewhere where you need to do. Now with LLM, which is able to understand the code pretty fast, you don't need to have those kind of detailed documentation in terms of how your business domain logic is presented to you and stuff like that. I feel today, if you're a services organization, you should be able to get into the development from day one rather than you get into the traditional model of like architecture design and then go step by step and stuff like that is what I feel like. At least there could be a lot of mom and pop shops which will be able to get into the software development, but not by adding like all this other ancillary stuff which you do, like your code counts or like all those kind of like your traditional software engineering model where you do that like code reviews. And I would, if I'm running a software services today, I would start from day one from having high level business logic documented in a Word, and then I don't need any other documentation from there on. I just need to know which which uh, which area I'm going to work on. Whether you want a web app or an Android or like you want a mobile or I don't need to write a test case. I don't need to write a detailed specification. Nothing. Uh, by just defining all of them in the skills and defining all of them in terms of like as a high level PR, that should be good enough for me to go. And the code is your complete repository and documentation for me. And after I finish the entire programming, I would ask an LLM to look at that and reverse generate the documentation part for me.
True. No, I think, Subbu, you're right. Yeah, I think the requirements have not changed, right? See, the way we do business has not changed, but perhaps, or rather, what is required to be done as a part of business not changed, but how we do the business has certainly changed, right?
Yeah.
See, you still have to negotiate a scope with your client. You need to still have a boundary around what is it you're required to deliver. You still need to be able to detail that so that way you still know that this is what the client needs and there needs to be that review. You still need to create design and architecture because as a part of the handover process back to the client, they need to have those documentation for themselves at a later point of time. And then, of course, you still need to meet stage gates as a part of your contractual things. You have code quality, you have cyclomatic complexity, you have all of those things which are still not gone, right? See, from a perspective of what is expected of you from a client has not changed. But definitely with the tools at your disposal, it can certainly make your life easier, accelerate it. See, one of the biggest challenges that we've always had in documentation is that it becomes stale very soon, right? What essentially is there?
They destroyed few people's career on that.
So what actually was there in the design document to what is there in your actual code is completely different as a fact, right?
Absolutely. So when you start the project, they match, but then as you progress in like when you finish it, they'll be sitting in two different islands actually.
Absolutely. So now, as you rightly mentioned, I think, see, today it is possible for us to actually at least bring some level of automation, because as you said, LLMs can comprehend the code. They can actually come back and tell you why perhaps something is there. Even writing inline documentation, right, which is
Yeah,
probably the
absolutely.
biggest challenge that we've always had, right? I mean, how many times I've written a code and gone back 6 months and I've seen and I'm like, I don't know what I've written here, right? Just forget about others. I've not understood my own code after 6 months. So you can
Yeah.
imagine the rest of them going through that, right? And
But I think
especially,
where I kind of pushing on the point is like, I mean, let's say everybody understands software engineering principles, whether it's 1 year, 2 year experience, whatever. When we started, we used to be expert at one particular language because we have to understand the I mean, the syntax and all that. So I met Subbu and we were sitting next to each other, and I used to be called the Java guy and he used to be the .NET guy, which he will not like today. So
I know,
I like
I
to
know.
poke it.
I want to wipe those years out.
He was
Yeah,
he
exactly.
was the
So
only .NET
my
guy at
question
some
is
point.
like, say, can you take anybody from college today, right? Or let's say you hire a, let's say, front end developer on, for example, on React, right? Can you ask them to create an application completely in a different framework?
Hmm,
Like,
hmm.
whatever the front end framework instead of React, something else, right?
Got it.
Is that really a feasibility? And it gets even more challenging when you get into the more well-established frameworks, like whether the entire .NET ecosystem and Azure and all those things. Is that really practical? That is what I'm getting into.
No, but
So if that is where the leveling has happened, then why
right.
are we looking for .NET developers, this developer, that developer? No, just look for developers with prompting skills, and they should be able to pick any skill. Okay, you just go by front end, the mid-tier, back-end kind of people is what it will move going forward, is what I'm thinking.
I think slightly differently there, Subbu. See, because I think the need for having a depth and understanding of your technology slash framework is still there, right? So because no matter whatever code gets generated, right? See, whatever that actually happens with the help of intelligence, you accelerate your development. I kind of go back to my earlier point that you still have to make sure that the code is in line with what actually you would want. Even if you were to prompt it and say, optimize this code, you will still need to be able to look at the code and figure out that it is truly doing what it is meant to, right? As I told, finally, these tools are merely helping you accelerate your entire process. Finally, you are accountable for it. If you are accountable for it, so tomorrow, if you have, let's say, a defect in production, and if you're unable to fix it, right, then, and if you don't know what is actually causing that, then you would be rendered completely useless, right? So at that point of time, so very clearly, the I don't believe that we will get to a situation where not having the depth and understanding of what actually you're trying to build is an option, right? So, I mean, if you really look at it, software engineering actually has more general principles like your object-oriented principles, and then you have design patterns and design principles, and then there are some framework-specific nuances. There are language-specific nuances, right? Like if you go to C sharp, you have attribute-based programming, and then you basically have delegates and all of these things. And in case of, like, for example, Java, you have interfaces and annotations. You still need to have some of those understanding because there is a way to write the code, right? In my mind, I
Yeah,
don't think you can completely divorce yourself and say, as long as I know how to write a good prompt, I'll be successful, right? It might be an accidental success. I don't think you can intentionally be successful there, right? So for that, you still have to have the depth. You still have to have somebody who basically can understand and be a software professional, right? Now, going back to your question with which you started off, can I actually bring someone who is very fresh into the field and perhaps has familiarity in one framework and actually have that person develop and deliver in another framework? See, the general answer is yes, but again, it goes back to later, right? So it's not really the first cut. What happens later, right? How do I really make updates? How do I make enhancements? And how are you able to then use the tool
correct.
to in a way that you're able to make the code continue to stay relevant? You know, don't change other parts of the code, right?
So I
So it
think
goes
that
back
comes
to
to
that.
the next, that is sort of a good segue into the next thing what I want to talk about. So most of the demos and all the great successes which you see outside, I mean, all these LLM plays are like marketing around, is around new apps, right? I get a completely new requirement. Hey, I just vibe coded in over like a weekend and hey, it's all up and all that, right? That's all fine. But IT services model, or at least some of our mature companies, including yourself, where you're dealing with a lot of legacy applications. and you are building, let's say, integrations with them, you are building modern interfaces for them. In that context, and that is where the majority of the maintenance contracts have been established with many IT service firms, right? They just sign up multi-year deals on managing these systems just to keep the lights on, and probably do some minor enhancements.
Right.
That I don't. That's where I feel these LLMs are not really there yet. I may be wrong, but my experience has been, let's say, if I give like a .NET application which Subbu developed 20 years back and ask some new guy to manage it using LLM with limited knowledge on .NET, can it do?
Got it.
And how big is that market where the IT service companies are? I just recently saw Claude launched a new thing. Say, hey, we can understand COBOL, right?
Mhm.
I'm sure you saw that.
Yeah, I did see that.
So, is it really practically feasible from your experience in the projects you're handling, where it is able to, let's say, handle such sort of complexities with legacy systems built 10, 15 years back? And is it able to modernize it
Got it.
to a newer framework or whatever?
Got it. So, no, I think we had a practical problem within ExaThought itself, where basically we had an application that was written in Flutter, some 0.86 version, right? We actually had worked on it and we had written it there. And then after some point, the app was deployed in Play Store, and suddenly Google sent us a message one day saying, if you don't upgrade it to 3 or above, we are going to delist your application, right? And also, we just had like less than a week to do that. Correct. So one of our engineers actually started taking a look at it, and then we actually started employing, one of these co-pilots, right? So along with it, we started working. Interestingly enough, it actually helped us accelerate the development of that, right? So it actually helped us. In fact, the response that actually my software engineer came and said was that, "Yeah, I would give equal credits to me and the co-pilot." Right? That's essentially what he said, because even though he was able to identify some of those older libraries that were deprecated, they were able to quickly change and even test and be able to even we were able to even deploy the app back into the app store, right? Now that is the question of Flutter, which is perhaps a more recent
Correct.
framework, so to say. Right now, is the argument relevant to some of the older and legacy languages, and it might be even like COBOL and mainframe and all of those things, right? So we'll have to really see, right? So because as you said, these particular models are as smart as the data that they have, right? And how much or other on which they
No, we
will
need not
train.
even go back to, like, say, COBOL. I even go back to, like,
.NET,
Java
.NET framework,
Enterprise,
right? Yeah,
.NET, or
yeah,
COM,
yeah,
DCOM kind
yeah.
of
It's like Bob
applications.
Decom, yeah.
What is, I mean, I also like Subbu's input here. What is the maturity of these today's LLM tools for that kind of frameworks and languages, right? Which is not that legacy, like, I mean, real legacy. They are just 20, 25 years old.
No, so
What's been your
I'll
experience?
probably just make one point and let Jay come in. But then, I remember in the earlier days of using LLM, generally we would get some very high quality responses for Python, but it would generally struggle on .NET. I remember that was essentially one of the
Exactly.
things we had as an experience. But, that was really in the initial versions of the LLM side, but not anymore. So I've not had a chance to look at that use case anymore, but I'll let Jay come
Okay.
in and then add my
No,
points.
I just want to add something to the earlier point. The way I see is that we are not going to have elaborate software development projects anymore. I see we will have more smaller projects coming in because the ability for ML ops to glue these applications are much easier. Now, you're not going to have one SAP kind of a big, large application for the entire workflow end to end. Rather, I would say all the future applications are going to be extremely small and which is focused on one function or two function, which will be able to easily glue with the pieces which are already sitting in my enterprises, which could be like a role-based access, or it could be like doing only purchase orders, or it could be doing only like receivables. I may not just go about doing the entire cycle end to end anymore in the newer developments. I see you will have more smaller teams who are consultants who are working on one area. They'll be able to rapidly build something which just glues automatically extremely easier with your existing application. The legacy systems, current LLMs, I feel will uh, upgrade or rewrite a lot of those legacy systems into more, either it could be like a completely a binary or it could be something like a more modern frameworks is what I feel. But it again, those are not going to be one end-to-end big applications like how it was written in legacy, wherein that will get chopped into multiple smaller pieces of application developed, even by smaller, where you will be able to just locally do certain things and talk to the legacy system with that fees, and then you retire that particular feature and then move on. I feel that is the direction where even the modernization of
But then,
COBOL.
so Subbu,
There is a term for
why?
that, sort of. There is
Yeah,
a strangler pattern, right?
yeah, go for
Essentially,
it.
right? See, right? It's called the strangler pattern, right? I think. No, sorry, Subbu, you're going to say something. I had something
Yeah, I
to
mean,
add to
what I
that.
was asking about ask him. So, do you feel there is no need to, let's say, translate your old COBOL applications into
I
something
was going to
modern?
respond to that. No, so I think
And what you're talking, Subbu, is like is essentially the experience of handling customer, right? I mean, basically the customer experience you're coming to, right? So what I handle, let's say, open an SAP application and do all those things. What you're saying is I'll interact with the same processes in a different way. I may just do it from an Excel document, or I just have a chat. And then these newer experiences will be generated by LLMs and
Yeah,
integrating with those backend ERP. That's what
yeah,
you're getting
yeah,
into.
yeah, exactly.
I get the point. So that's where I'm challenging you. So maybe let's leave the really mission critical applications like banking systems. We probably cannot replace over the period of time in these newer experiences. But do you see that why is Claude then say, hey, we can do COBOL modernization? Why are they even getting there? If that's the case.
No, I see two reasons. One is these systems are like basically large corporations like who develop COBOL, maintain COBOL, are just kind of blackmailing via consultants, billing hours and stuff like that. This is like kind of in this strangholding the industry, not move again.
Yeah, yeah.
There are certain set of people who have a very good understanding of those business processes and who has got a very good understanding of the programming language and who is maintaining that hardware, just kind of strangholding the entire industry. Like they are just the gatekeepers who are just sitting it now. And that I feel small, it which will get broken into multiple smaller pieces over a period of time with more modern technology, with like rewriting of those functions with more modern frameworks or languages with the help of LLMs, which can still glue with the existing apps for a time being on a bridge basis. And then, but the LLM will just kind of front end and then move, propel that both in terms of like splitting that into multiple applications or like being an interface is what I feel. But I may be totally wrong. It's just kind of hunch is what I,
So I have
I
a
see.
slightly different point of view there. See, prior to starting my own organization, actually I worked in many other organizations. So one of the larger organization, which is probably over 100-year old, right? That actually I was there. We used to use HP's non-stop platform, like Tandem. And I'll tell you, it was actually used on very mission critical applications like point of sale and stuff like that. And in the retail industry, Black Friday is a big deal, right? So basically,
Yeah.
we need to make sure that the systems are never down. And you won't believe, right? So actually, even at the most peak load, we would only see 36% spike in the CPU to 38% spike in spike in the CPU, right? See, these are extremely sturdy, strong systems, right? And they are actually able to handle very high scale transactions at very high levels of concurrency, right? They're able to actually do that. And for whatever reasons, right, they have been built that way. And then also there is reliability because of the number of years in which these applications have run, right? So there is a cost aspect of it, right? Still mainframes actually are built in millions of instructions per second, and it's certainly a very expensive proposition, and a lot of companies have tried to get out of it, and I think now most of them successful than the others. So I believe that there is actually that level of industrial strength from these particular applications that were built, in those particular times, and they continue to become the backbone, as I said, perhaps airline industry, perhaps banking
Yeah.
industry, and there are some of the core systems that are still there because they have to have that level of reliability, right? So to be able to function itself, and then by just the way the nature of the amount of time that they have run, there is that built-in confidence, right? And you will need a huge effort to be able to migrate them over, right? But having said that, I also know of efforts where people have tried to migrate off of that piece by piece, and with all of these these tools at our disposals, I guess it helps us to do it in a more informed way than actually what we had earlier. Like, if Claude is able to do that, right? If Claude is able to comprehend COBOL code and able to help us what this code is written, because I'm sure the engineers who wrote the code is not there anymore, right? Either they are retired or they're perhaps not even there, right? So it's true, right? I mean, like, what I'm getting at is, but it's actually a new lease of life for us, right? So to be able to undertake those rewrite operations, right? Because in the past, if people were not able to do because there was nobody to help them understand what code that was, I guess right now with LLMs we have at least that opportunity and we can still start that, right? And touching upon earlier points that Subbu mentioned, I think the term again, because we are from a consulting firm, we can throw a lot of terms. Right? I was kidding, right? So, but then basically, Mark is one of the other terms that you hear, right? MACH. Mark is an architecture, right? So, which basically is four-lettered acronym, right? M stands for microservices, A stands for API first, C stands for cloud native, and H stands for headless, right? Essentially, most of the enterprises are really moving towards what's called a Mark architecture, where basically the entire, as you said, there is no big monolithic application right now. Instead, you have a lot of those micro applications that are coming together and they are stitched in different configurations at the application level to deliver more services, right? So that way
Uh,
you have most of these
yeah,
principles.
that actually gives a leeway to the next thing which I want to talk about is essentially the maintenance of these vibe coded apps, right? And as you said, like if let's say over the weekend some IT department guy just builds some application, right? I mean, they may be talking to a backend system, whatever it is. Let them. There could be Humpty number of use cases these guys can think of. How are these going to be maintained over a period of time?
Yeah,
And you remember the classical application rationalization problem, which used to be a big IT services opportunity.
correct.
Every other CIO, I mean, their primary motive for any CIO is to do that, right?
Right.
When they come in, hey, how much of apps can I reduce?
Correct.
But now, are we going the reverse way? Are we just allowing everybody to create, especially, I mean, leave the outside world, but in the enterprise world, if you allow everybody to create every other app, who is end of the day responsible for, to your point on the availability and the scalability and other aspects of it, right? The mission critical systems, obviously, nobody's going to touch it. They're going to run as is. I mean, I don't think ERPs are going to be replaced by LLM anytime soon.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
But I think all the our surrounding applications, and if you have a proliferation of these things in an enterprise, how is it? I mean, how are you going to even control that?
So I think they're very anecdotal to me even today, right? Like we basically, I don't think we have a sustained way of that kind of an accelerated development, right? So I think from an enterprise perspective, as you rightly mentioned, every organization has to make sure that the cost of IT is at a certain level, right? From an overall spend perspective, right? Different industries have different cost of IT, right? Like banks really spend 6%, IT retail spends, I think, in the range of 1.5 to 2. My data may be dated, but then that's how I remember thinking about it, right? So basically, the technology spends are still there, and you want to make sure that your other abilities that you need, right? Like the reliability, the maintainability, the performance, the stability, all those abilities still needs to be guaranteed, right? End of the day, you're still building an industrial strength application because these are, as you said, these are very critical for business outcomes. So you cannot kind of take an approach where I'll say just because these technologies are available, I'll just let people build code and deploy because finally somebody has to also account for, as you said, making sure that they are not creating any security loopholes or it is basically not hogging the resources to an extent that the cost shoots up, right? So those things are definitely needed. And I think where we still are learning that. So I don't know. I have a good answer for that in terms of how do we really leverage this effectively, yet make sure that you're able to do it in a more focused way to be able to help you really accelerate and not really land up with a big set of other small applications, which again, as you said, are a lot of duplications and
Yeah,
go through another
I mean
rationalization process.
that's also the question to you, Subbu. I think you talked about we're not going to build any big monolithic applications and everything is going to be like this. What do you see as the challenges there?
So I agree with
See,
whatever
let's
Jay
say,
said.
I mean, I get a team today, I just white code something, and then 6 months down the line, the team itself is not there. They probably all of them left.
Yeah.
Who is going to own that?
I'll come to that. I'll agree with whatever Jay said. Jay is looking at something, things like in a very uh, with conventional or orthodox way how things will move. I'm going to go completely opposite direction to that. So I'm going to borrow an analogy what happened in late 90s in the manufacturing. If you look at it where you have like your automobile or like your either being like a hardware manufacturer in IT or any of those, we used to have a lot of repairable parts where we used to just buy, go replace them. When China came in post liberalization, the whole analogy changed. Okay, you have a problem, just bring the device, throw it out, and I'll get you a new one. Because the cost of making that has just come down. It is no more feasible to have a supply chain, sales networks, post services network. None of it was not possible at all. It was much cheaper to just replace the entire device than manage the whole thing. I see LLM will bring that to the software development,
You are saying
where
it
you
will
will
be in a
see
use and throw
you
software.
yeah, absolutely. So you go delete the folder, ask another agent to hire and build it again from ground up, and then you are happy to
Wow.
deploy it again. Absolutely. No mercy, delete the folder. That's it.
So
Delete the
there
repository,
goes
delete the
your
file.
maintenance contracts.
Absolutely. Kill all that. Kick those guys out, kill all that, hire another LLM, just build it ground up actually and deploy that in production.
Do you think it's feasible? Is it?
Absolutely. That's where we are going. That's what I will say. But Jay would say no, but then I will say that's.
What can I say? I'm a cautious optimist, right? So what do I mean?
No, but I agree because the balance of what I am saying and what he says will eventually happen. And like, and what Jay says will be the how all the enterprises think because like they are not like I have no responsibility in my thing, but they will have investors sitting in answerable to that, and they will have like a lot of so they will progress like how Jay is saying. But I would say if a new company is getting into a business domain, I would operate like this. Like I won't have that kind of a legacy in my back office where I need to take care like what Jay is saying. I'll be able to just go operate in a just
No,
fly by
but
night
Subbu, I think just
operating.
to push you back on that. See, it
Okay.
is great for the front end apps, right? Okay, I have like 10 web apps or 20 mobile apps in my enterprise. I can just throw 10 of them, rewrite it. That's fine.
Yeah.
I completely give into that.
Yeah.
But there are some certain significant systems which runs your business, right? Which is tied into your business processes. That's where the ERPs come in. That's where your
Yep.
mainframes, order, they were, and your other data lakes and others are there. I don't think that you can wipe code them off, right?
I'm not saying you will
That is
wipe
going to completely
those.
disrupt your entire business process itself. Let's say I am running a manufacturing company and relying on that. It is not feasible where I can run the business with just wipe code apps and I don't invest on any big ERP. Do you think that's the future?
No, I'm not saying you will wipe code that. What you are thinking is that you're thinking it from how your existing systems are there and how we will move to the new one. What I'm saying is that you will start building new systems and move towards monolith. Like your model will change where how you collect data and where you deposit them will change. It may not be like your ERP collecting the bulk of the data and saving it. You could be getting data from different channels and then where you are moving it. It not necessarily need to have an entire set of ERP sitting there serving all the purposes is what I'm saying. But then again, it's not going to happen overnight and your existing companies are not going to move in that direction. But then over a period of time, newer, more smaller applications, what we used to have in 90s and 2000s will start appearing is what I feel because it's just easy to develop and destroy very easily and easy to stitch them and glue them. It's much easier than how it was earlier is what I feel is. But then I would give it to Jay.
So again, as I said, as you said, probably I'm a little more traditional thinker because when I think about my client and when I think about what they have to do, right? See, because they still
Yeah.
have a business to run, right? They're not in the business of writing and rewriting applications, right?
Yeah.
They predominantly use technology as an enabler, and then there is an aspect of see if the solution is actually user friendly enough and it is actually serving my business needs, I'll have very less reason to make those investments, right? I would rather spend those dollars where I will actually need my business to go to the next level. My technology investments would actually go there, right? And then you would life cycle them out, right? So traditionally, if you look at it, softwares tend to go out of, I would say, the relevance in about 5 6 years, right? That's generally when you tend to go back and rewrite the software, right? And now the one advantage I really see right now is that it actually, going back to what Subbu was mentioning earlier, the rate at which I can develop the application and the rate at which I can gain clarity on my next steps has increased because, as I think, as you said, reasoning machine, right? My reasoning capability has been enhanced multifold by this particular mechanisms, which can actually go and understand large volumes of information and get back to me with that specific insight that I need, right? And earlier, if I had spent weeks together to just do that discovery, now perhaps I'm doing it in days. And that helps me to take more informed and a clearer next step compared to what I had earlier, right? So even though we had written 2 weeks, 3 weeks of discovery, analysis, architecture, as a state, to be state, any of those things that actually we would do in the past, there will still be that element of doubt to say, have I missed something, right?
I
So
wish I started my career now.
no, you're right. It looks very different, right? I think Subbu
Yeah,
asked questions about
absolutely.
crisis, right? So, but I don't think the core principles of running the business has changed at all, right? So that remains the same. So that's what probably I think we shouldn't forget, right? That's kind of what I keep thinking, right? In this whole conversation about vibe coding and accelerated development and agentic IDEs or any of those things, we tend to kind of ignore the fact that the businesses are not changed. What they actually have to
So
do is
let
still
me
the
let
same.
me ask one question there on that front, Jay. I think let's not talk about very complicated process. Let's just take about CRM, right, for
Sure.
example. And we had this discussion point in our earlier podcast where we talked about, do you really need let's say I am a new company just starting. Take whatever company, you're a service company or a manufacturing, whatever. Do I really need to invest on a CRM system? Whatever CRM system you take. So today, it is very much feasible where your lead management, your all those things can be done without investing on a CRM software, right? You can have your sales team, your sales force send in your leads in, let's say, WhatsApp, for example, or email. And you have these great agents like OpenCloud, we talked about in the previous episode, where how it can be used to get this data from these agents. And you can build a database in the backend, even as simple as a Google Sheet, right? And you can have like a front end where I can just simply query what's this lead doing, what's my, whatever query you want to do it. What's your take on it? Why would
So,
somebody want to invest on a
so,
CRM today if I
Subbu,
am
I think
starting?
we will answer this in two different parts, right? Do you need a CRM system? The answer is still yes, right? See, how you are
But why?
creating a CRM system is different, right? Because you still will, because the purposes of me being able to understand who my customers are, how do I maintain my relationships with them, how do I ensure the journey of what the customer has been. And when you try to look at it at a larger base of customers, I'll still need that. I'll still need a way to be able to gain control over my relationship management as a customer, as a company. I still need to be able to do that because I need to stay on top of my understand what my customers and what are they actually needing, what are their challenges, how do I really address them, how do I really go and meet them, when do I meet them. These are the problems that are not changed, right? So the do I need a CRM solution for me as a company, as an enterprise? The answer is yes. Now the second part of the question was around, hey, do I need to go and buy an existing SaaS solution or perhaps an off-the-shelf solution that I can install,
That's my
like
question.
right from Odoo to either Salesforce or HubSpot or Zoho, right? Any of those things. See, that definitely can be a question, right? Because right now, because these newer tool sets gives me an ability to build something and then be able to run, perhaps that can be my choice of implementing that. Beyond a point, perhaps my business process will get so complex that either I have a choice of continuing to write and manage that, or perhaps kind of go and buy something. Because again, it goes back to, if I am an organization who wants to make sure that if I'm in the business of manufacturing, that's where I would like to focus and not really building the software, right? That's kind of what I would say. That principle has not
No, no,
changed.
my question is
And
from
then,
you being an IT services, company. Let's say you are consulting a manufacturing company, right? Today, if somebody says, "Hey, I have this problem where my sales team is there, and then I mean, all these things are handled in Excel and all that. Do you today go and say, hey, invest on whatever CRM you want to propose? Or you would say, hey, let's not worry about it. You guys continue your channel, what you're doing. Sales guy, one may send in Signal, sales guy, two may send in WhatsApp, but then I can create that intelligence in the background with the AI and other things, right? That's what my question is, and I think Subbu, you can also add, and that's what you talked about in the previous one. And this comes to your point, Subbu, where why we need to invest on a CRM system. I have nothing against CRM system, by the way, but
No, I am also
I'm
not.
just taking
I'm
it as an
not.
example.
I agree with
As
you.
a business, I mean, because this is a key business process any manufacturing company would need, right? CRM is probably a very key aspect for their
No, absolutely right. See,
businesses. Yeah.
I will be true consultant and I'll say it depends, right? No, no, I was joking there, right? So, but what I'm trying to tell you is, see, the considerations are many, right? Like, for example, today, if you are letting your
No, Jay,
business,
what I'm pushing again there. I know it depends, but will you say, okay, I am this expert of this CRM software, we won't name anything because that will go
yeah,
against them.
correct, yeah,
Or you would say, hey, don't worry about CRM, I will create it for you, right? I will create a unique experience for you. This again, customer experience, an internal customer I'm talking about, but it's a sales team experience. I
yeah,
won't disrupt anything the way they are working and pushing them a tool on them. Rather, let them work the way they want. We will drive the intelligence from there.
no,
Yeah. Go
got
ahead.
it, got it, Subbu. Sure, sure. Again, I'll kind of go back to what I said, right? If you are an enterprise and if I am actually building a solution for my customer, building the solution is only one part of my problem, right? I have to be worried about their enterprise security, data security, and all those things. And if I let people use any of the tools, then I'll not have control over that, right? It becomes very hard for me to protect my customers' interests. So I'd still go back and look at it and I'll design a solution that would still probably bring a type of a solution that would still guarantee that, right? Because finally, customer data security is paramount, right? I cannot actually kind of let people say that, hey, use whatever kind of, as you said, messaging solutions that you have, and we will still try to integrate. Now, that's great from a flexibility perspective, but that's not so great from an enterprise security perspective, right? I cannot actually let that happen. If I were to build a solution, that's what I would think of. How do I ensure that I actually create a solution that is still user friendly, but at the same time, I don't actually create a situation where this person leaves and takes the entire data along with him because it is on his personal device, right? Or it is on his personal application. It is very hard for us to gain control on that auditability, compliance, regulation, right? All those things are still relevant for us, right? Again, I'm kind of giving you a different answer than what actually we're looking for. Having said
No,
that,
yeah. Good.
so those are still the principles that haven't changed, is all essentially I'm saying, right? I would still have to go and build a solution like that, right? If I'm still asking my team to straddle an Excel sheet, see, would I rather not have my sales guys focus on selling than actually trying to figure out where the data is? I would rather create an intelligent experience, which would be an assistive technology where I can speak into it and get the data I need, right? Because my goal is that, right, to reduce the overall time on non-value add and get the time back to the people to be able to do what they have to do. Right? That's kind of how I would think about it. And my entire solution design would focus there. And then I would leverage these tools and technologies to build that level of, I would say, that flexibility, security, or whatever, right? Agents and all of those things. I'll give you another simple, interesting example that actually we're working for one of the customers where these guys essentially are med tech, right? So basically a medical devices company. And then they actually have a field force of about 400, 500 people, right? And these are very specialized medical devices, right? And when this device goes down, it is very hard for the customers because they're not able to run their tests, right? And it basically means it's loss of revenue for them. Now, today, the salesperson actually have to come, diagnose, and then figure out there is a part that's missing and then go back and get it right. And even then, there are so many scenarios, and not every service technician is equipped to handle that easily, right? Now, here is where technology like LLM can become amazingly helpful, right? Because then you can help search through those thousands of pages of product documentation and pinpoint that person to that relevant specific problem, and then even guide that person to debug very quickly and bring back the system to a functioning state, right? Now, here is where I would leverage these technologies, right? Like how essentially this technology can help us accelerate value for the customers is here and not really in some of the other examples that you mentioned, because while that is technically possible, it will probably not help us achieve some of the other enterprise objectives, right? That's kind of how you would think. I don't know if that makes sense.
Okay.
It makes absolute sense because this large enterprises always focus on security and reliability and availability,
It's
just like,
accountable, right? Essentially,
absolutely,
enterprises
because they
are
have
accountable. Yeah.
the business needs to be profitable and there is an investor and there are a lot more relied on
All of
absolutely,
those things are there. So we cannot compromise on those
absolutely,
principles. And your system design has to follow those core principles, right? While all of those things are possible, what is probable and what is real and viable is what we have to look at, right? So
to just give a counter perspective and to get a smile from Jay, I just want to give you another.
I'm already smiling, Sulu.
Say for just a brief time, let's assume I'm a consultant, like I'm giving consulting for a new software project or something like that. Say a new customer is coming to me and then he says like I want to become a food aggregator, like your Zomato or Swiggy or something. I would suggest him completely a different stack. I would ask him to make his front end as LLM, wherein I will put an MCP on my end and I will publish services to LLM, wherein he will be able to order food via LLM, not from my service or my app. I won't have any application sitting on App Store or a website, nothing other than my branding, which are business processes, core business processes. Like however other food aggregators do their business, I do the same thing. But my IT stack or software stack is going to be completely different from what is there in the market today. That is what the other example I would give for you, the previous answer, just with the consumer stack in keeping that in perspective, where I'm not coming out with the like key critical factors like, reliability, security, all that is important to me. But at the same time, I have a liberty to experiment with more modern technology, wherein like I don't need to have the same interfaces exposed to my users sitting and collecting the data the way they are doing. I can go tell the LLM vendor that these are the services. You can query my restaurant, make these orders and everything, but I don't have any front end or any application sitting there. I would rather look at that as my new. I would suggest somebody who's coming to me as that consulting advice than asking them to go with the traditional stack of building web app, mobile app, and everything. Like I said, like I see that kind of transformation happening is what I feel because the traditional way that is not going to just take anything away from what Jay said. There are enterprises going to move on that direction, and there are companies going to work on this direction as well. Like wherein we are going to
absolutely, Subha, absolutely. No, I think
we are going to marry these two at some point of time. Is what
it is already happening, right? So basically today, I think earlier they like the way there is the previous revolution of API ecosystem came in, right? So where that became a standard way to integrate with an enterprise. Now the agency ecosystem is developing, right? So basically, one level is that I will expose my API as a tool for any sort of LLMs, right? Like, for example, yesterday we were trying to research something. Zoho Desk already gives us an MCP tool out of the box, right? I don't need to sit and write an MCP tool for that. And
Zoho adapted it, like Swiggy, all those guys are adapted.
So that's because, it actually helps us build those, because the next stage or the next wave of development is really around those, right? The building agents, building autonomous, intelligence that can help you accelerate your business process, right? So for that, you will always need tool integrations. Earlier, I was looking at using integrations as API. Now I'll actually look at integrating with MCPs. Next, I think I'll start integrating with the agents that are already written by them, right? Now, so there are already standard protocols that are coming, right? Like agent to UI, agent to agent, MCP. Right? You talk about all the standardization, it's already beginning to happen. And that is going to help us build that layer of, I would say, those interfaces, right? Now, these will become some of the newer interfaces, because if you have created an A2A compliant agent, it is possible for you to discover the agent. It is possible for you to converse with that agent. You can use agent as a tool, right? So there are those kind of patterns that are already emerging, and it is becoming increasingly easy for you to build your workflows on top of those, right? And that definitely is the future. There is no question.
And there is one catch here is that you're building. It is a traditional argument of like, can I build my platform on somebody else's, like, can I build my application or like my business based on some other platform where he can just stranglehold me any day for some other business interest what he has? Like, he say prioritize another aggregator in his platform than me? That is a possibility. But then till we go there, and then if my business is bigger, then probably I can think of having my own discovery mechanism or building my own agency and stuff like that. But then till then, for me to have an entry to compete with the bigger players in the market, I can get this like kind of leverage where I can just build a business, start the business on somebody else's platform, and then from there branch out to my own kind of a thing. So
Yeah, yeah. See, that's the new integration ecosystem. There is no question
yeah,
about it, right? So
yeah,
because
absolutely.
companies, because I would want to make sure that I am able to maximize my services to you,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Structured, unstructured, whatever it is, right? So I guess again it goes back to how these technologies now enabled for you to integrate at an intelligence level. So that way, your whole answer engines and all of those things that actually
Yeah,
have begun to become available, these are now essentially becoming tools in the entire process and even inside the enterprise, right? So, in fact, it's not even like
yeah.
external. Think about, again, going back to the traditional mark architecture I talked about, right? Imagine each of your microservice having its own MCP, right?
I've been dreaming about it from 2004.
your your product, your cart, your catalog, your everything starting to have its own MCP
Yep.
tools, and then you start building agentic AI solutions, even for internal
Yeah,
querying
yeah,
purposes.
absolutely.
It can significantly speed up your
But from a
entire
services
development process.
aspect, Jay, do you see this as, like, say, you are going to enable an enterprise and have them build these things on whatever LLM they choose, or you are going to wrapper them around with your strategic partnership, which we see with some of the bigger IT service companies in India, like Infosys, for example, tying up with Claude and other TCS, probably with Google, is what I read. Oh, what's their gameplay? Are they going to say, "Hey, we can enable these LLMs for you," or are they going to, let's say, come up with wrappers? For example, "Hey, I'm going to create like a CRM agent. I'm going to create this agent, that agent," and I believe Infosys probably have their own layer on top, which probably they're calling Topaz, if I'm not wrong, doing some of these things. So, just an extension to these things. Where is IT service players are going to go? Are they going to say, just like the traditional, hey, I can implement CRM or I can implement whatever, right? Your payroll systems, whatever. Are they shifting it into, hey, I can enable this LLM on top of these things?
Mm-hmm. So
Is that where it is heading?
yeah, yeah. See, to your earlier question around partnerships between Anthropic and Infosys and OpenAI, I really don't know the contours of it, so I'm not able to comment on that yet.
No, that's
I
fine. Yeah.
have to go back
No,
and
I
look at
mean,
it.
give an
But
example, but
yeah, yeah, no, no,
from
I
a,
got it. So, but then going back to your earlier question, see, if I am actually a consulting firm trying to work with my customer to be able to solve the problem, these days, what we've already begun to realize, like the way in the earlier days when cloud revolution happened, every company already has a preferred cloud partner, right? So more often than not, that particular methodology is also coming into their preferred models that they would like to use, right? So because they would have already done their assessments and their own hardening process, security assessments, and all of those things, and it have landed on a certain model that they would choose to use, right? As
On a
long as
on a lighter note, you're saying your CTOs and CXOs needs to play golf with the LLM vendors.
I don't know what that's about. So I think, but the
I heard that is how some of the cloud companies develop the markets.
yeah, exactly. You're right. You're right.
So I was just like, go on. Like,
sure,
sorry to interrupt you.
maybe I should start doing that too. So, but the version I know, right, essentially is slightly different. But when I go there as a technology partner, right, so more often than not, those parts of the decisions are already taken,
No, no,
right?
but
And then you kind of
like
go
say,
on top of
take
it.
this golf analogy. Let's say you're playing a golf with like a CEO of another company. I mean, non-technical company, and you are there. Would you be selling, hey, I can do cloud integration, I can do open integration, or would you talk from a agentic AI sort of perspective? Hey, I can do this CRM agent for you. I can do this manufacturing, whatever the shop floor agent for you. Is that how you see this going ahead? You can
No,
partner
I
with any
would
other LLM. That is your
again.
internal discussion.
No, I agree. I would still approach it as a problem-driven conversation, right? I would still say that I will reduce your mean time to resolution, right? Basically,
Exactly.
if you're taking 3 days to resolve a problem, we can now bring it down to 1 day. But then the way you would want to implement that solution can be through a path of an AI and path of all of those things, right? But I would presume that those conversations will not still be different, right? So it's just that right now we can say that earlier it would take you perhaps 6 months to do it. Now you can perhaps do it in 3 months, right? So those would be the changing conversations, I suppose, in those golf courses, if you that's what you're actually looking at. But I would still say that that would probably still be there because as a business, I would still be worried about how can I actually optimize my process, how can I maximize shareholder value, how can I maximize customer value, right? Those will be still, if I were running a company, those are still on top of my mind. And all of these are means to that particular end, right? And that's kind of how I would still think about, right? And then without compromising those critical aspects of corporate governance, security, and all those good things, right? So I would say that that would still be the same. Again, going back to Subba, I'm still a conventional thinker, right? So that's probably that's probably what I think would still be the case, but I think I want
No,
to.
but if you are an IT services CEO as conventional, think of a manufacturing CEO who could be like even more conventional, right? Yeah, so that is where I was saying, like, what you actually sell as a service, right? That's what I'm coming to in the AI world, actually, right?
Absolutely.
And also, I mean, that's a good lever for the next thing where, let's say, you get a proposal for a project. Do you see today where your customer or client is pushing you for, hey, can you give me the AI discount? I know you are using the AI productivity tools, whatever you use, coding tools or anything.
Mm.
Why don't you give me this percentage of AI discount? Is that coming into discussion now?
Got it. So I don't think it is still such an active conversation right now, but obviously there is reference to that. In some cases, actually, some of our customers have said you should actually use the tooling ecosystem that we provide, right? Like basically, they would also want
Okay.
to make sure that it's not just you should use AI, but you're like, we will give you the
No,
entire
but that where
ingredients
I'm
like
coming
that.
from, Jay, that is
But
a
I'll come to
very
that.
mature
I'll,
organization will do that. Let's say not a mature organization let's say, giving you a project for building an app or something.
yeah.
Are they challenging, saying, "Hey, my son can develop this over the weekend, right?"
Yeah, I've heard that too.
I mean,
I've
that kind of
really heard,
discussion.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's yeah.
I've really heard that too. So what is happening, Subhi, is I think, see, it is also the market forces at play, right? So if you're, let's say, going to fixed price projects today, I think, if you are submitting a bid and if there are three more participants, generally some of them are already beginning to pass those benefits onto the customer in terms of more competitive bid, right? And then the customers are naturally preferring them, right? Because other things are still non-negotiable. So what I'm thinking is more than the customer is asking the matter, the competitive ecosystem is already beginning to factor the benefits and they are beginning to pass some of those and keep some of those benefits with them, right? But it is definitely a matter of time before some of the other ways the customers are asking is, if let's say that if you wanted to do like let's say if it is a type of a project where you can't put a scope but you would want to do like a time and material aspect of it, the questions are really around, hey, why do you need 4 people? Can't you get it done to 2 people and things like that, right? So the conversations are not direct, but perhaps it's slightly in a different way. But finally, the root causes are still about the fact that now you have this huge intelligence engine behind you. Why can't you accelerate the development and naturally
Right.
result into some bit of benefit, right? So that's kind of how I would say things are beginning to play out, and it's kind of market automatically beginning to factor those in, I would say. At least that's been my experience. Yeah.
Okay. I just want the last segment that we have almost beyond our time, what we planned for. I think one interesting conversation, especially in the IT services space, is hiring, right? And I think that's pretty much your ball game has been for so many years. It's just your talent you're selling, and then what are the best people you can hire. So I keep hearing a lot of sort of distressing stories from HR and other team. Hey, the candidate I'm interviewing is using LLM right in front of me. He's using two screens, and whatever I'm saying, he's able to answer that. Is that really a concern? Are you still evaluating resources based on, hey, do I know the syntax of this, whatever? Uh, provided you are going to give them these LLM tools, what do you see? Does HR need to be worried about, hey, he's using LLM to answer my questions? Or say, hey, use this LLM and structure the interview in a different perspective of problem solving, right? I don't worry about what language you use, what syntax you use. That's not my concern because that is all done deal. I mean, I just query on basic computer science programming skills. What's your take on it? Why are we so hell bent on? Let's say, I mean, you see so many social media posts. Hey, this guy use LLM to answer question, but why are you really worried about it? You know, everybody is supposed to use it.
Yeah. So, Hasu, see, I think I'll tell you my principle of trying to hire talent, right? See, the way I would actually like to hire someone is, hey, is the person able to hold himself or herself on her or his own when you are given a problem? Right? How do you really approach solving the problem, right? Now, it is great for you to leverage LLMs to enhance your thinking. It is perhaps very dangerous when you actually have to borrow the thinking from the LLM itself, right? Because then you are very limited, right? So I would basically, again, as I said, my debate is not about should you use LLM, not use LLM, because even when we actually go for hiring, we say, please use all your resources at your disposal, right? If you copy a code from the internet and show it to me, you have to explain that, right? You have to make sure that you're able to comprehend that, right? So I guess that's probably what I would look for in the talent, right? So as you said, currently, this is our, I'm not testing the memory of the software engineer, right? I don't need to do that. What I'm really testing is the reasoning ability of the software engineer because that's what essentially I need. And the question is, how much of augmentation are you getting from these models versus how much are you able to think by yourself? And the more important thing is, are you able to think without it, right? So that is essentially the point of discussion that I would look at when I'm trying to hire for talent, right? And that is more translatable, right? So if you probably
But
are
but
unable to
like
distinguish, yeah, that becomes a big problem, right? That's all I'm trying to get at.
yeah, I understand. Maybe Subbu can add. Like say, I mean, you are hiring for an architect. I understand what you're saying because there the thinking and the how you build it and all that comes in. But you're hiring like a fresher, like a programmer, right? Like just out of college or 1 year, 2 year into the industry. Traditionally, how we used to hire, and I used to hire is always okay. I give a problem statement. Hey, write the code in front of me. That is changing now, right? I don't need to worry about it. I just feed that into LLM and gives me. Now, how do I evaluate such kind of junior positions is what I mean, is that changing? I mean, are we still stuck with the old way of evaluating those junior programming resources? So we won't add anything. Yeah.
See, not in the services perspective. That is a completely different ball game. And then
I
second, I
mean,
don't.
it is applicable to any
Yeah,
hire,
yeah, no,
right?
but
Not
I generally try to run away from interviews. I tell the HR that was I don't want to be part of it. But I'll give you just like an outsider perspective where if I'm given a power to hire somebody, then assuming that as well. I would say I would test him his ability to understand the differentiation of various stacks, like what is the high level understanding he's got. If he's able to explain me a web application architecture, does he understand the difference between a framework and a library? Does he understand the difference between how a source code works? What is forking versus merging, branching, and stuff like that? Theoretically, if he is able to explain me that, I would look at something like, is every building block of software development has any clarity on it? Like you shouldn't be like, when you say, I want to don't use certain frameworks or certain firewalls rules, you have to set something like that. If he doesn't understand it, I wouldn't probably interested in that candidate. But I would hire if he tells me that I don't know all the commands of IP table, but if you ask me to open 44380 and everything, I know how to open that with some tool and then get it back and check, then yeah, I would be interested to have further discussions with that kind of. I'm giving you a very, very high level example, but then the whole fundamental thing I would look at something like this is one has to have a very good comprehensive understanding of the building blocks of all the system, not at a syntactical level, but at the at the slightly one level higher, where he is able to stitch services, he is able to understand the stack, frameworks, libraries, all the high level stuff, at least like middle and high level stuff, if he's able to, I would probably list. But
I'll
once you know
probably
that, yeah,
I'll add
go
one
ahead.
more thing, right? Like I was listening to one of podcasts of one of my other friend Kishan, who's actually CTO at Maverick. He actually made a very interesting point, and just taking a leaf of that. See, when we started our original programming days, coding in Fox Pro C and all, our editors actually didn't give us any support. It was very important for us to
Yeah.
remember the APIs. It was important for us to remember
Yep.
the code structure. So our interview process were to really see how good can you actually remember the code structures and everything, right? Once Eclipse started coming, once our Microsoft Visual Studio started coming, the moment you press a dot, you would get an IntelliSense, right? So you didn't have to
Eclipse.
remember
Wow. Okay.
you didn't have to remember the
I have
API.
horror stories Eclipse.
Right.
Anyway.
But what I'm
It
saying
took
is
many years to adjust to that, the tool
Yeah.
takes.
but the point I'm trying to get at is you didn't have to
I mean, we
remember the
used to,
APIs
Jay,
anymore.
just to, sorry to, I mean, your train of thought. I used to code in Ultra Edit and
Oh,
copy into Eclipse just to compile it.
Yeah.
That's sorry,
no,
that's
no.
how Eclipse bad it was, right? A heavy bloated software it was. It
I
just
understand, but basically what I'm saying is that the IntelliSense start of
Yep.
kind of then came to the next generation where we didn't have to remember the APIs anymore, right? Then I had to only remember, okay, that I needed to write the code in a certain way. I don't need it to have Java documentation just by
but
clicking
then
through this to remember the
how
API.
are you
Right?
structuring an interview today? I mean, what is the
You're
change you
right.
have
Kind
done?
of fast forward further, Stack Overflow came. You didn't even have to remember that, right? And then fast forward now, LLMs have come. So obviously the way we have to interview also has to change, right? So that is something which is very clear because the success
So if you
factors
want
for
to
the
give,
new
like, say,
generation
a
is different.
couple of tips for any interviewer, what would be the top two
Sure.
tips you would
So
give? How to
yeah,
evaluate like a programmer, right? Like a
yeah.
junior developer or senior.
I would stay away from theoretical question, right? So I won't actually say explain multiple inheritance, explain interface and all. That's not something that, again, as I said, we are not testing the memory of the engine, but we still need to understand. I would always, the way I would start is I'll say, pick up your favorite project, right? If he's a fresher, I would say, let's take your final year project and let's talk about what you've done, right? And then when you go application based conversation, right, then it becomes easier for us to talk a lot more about what is that because no LLM can give you that work, right? So basically, you are really trying to have a conversation on the work that you have done as opposed to trying to have some theoretical conversation which is very I would say assumption oriented, right? If I and that's what I really like because during those conversations I generally tend to ask, oh, you know what, if you do this, this would have happened, how would you solve that, right? So then it helps me kind of really understand how that individual is thinking as opposed to really know if he remembers something, right? So those are the type of conversations that actually I go with, even in terms of, for example, even if you're looking at interviewing a fresher, they'd still have to understand lists and queues, and they'd still have to understand how to kind of optimize your algorithms and things of that sort. You can still take a day-to-day problem and say, let's try to solve this together, right? That's kind of how I have really, that's kind of would be my favorite style of conversation and interview, right? Because at the end of it, again, I go back to the fact that I want to know if you can think and not really if you can remember all the syntax, right? That's kind of how I look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I that's all I wanted to discuss today. Unless Subbu, you want to add something?
I
Or
must,
Jay,
you're
you
the
want to
boss.
share any experiences on AI good, AI bad, whatever, right? So
No, Subbu, I think it's possible. It's been fun. Thank you so much for letting me crash your party. Right, it has been fun talking and just kind of talking about it. See, I think the impact of AI is real. There is no question about it, right? And we have been able to see that it genuinely can give you speed, right? Similarly, I think it is also important for us to make sure that even when we're using it internally, see how do you really use it responsibly, right? So because the fundamentals still don't change, right? See, you have to still be respectful of your client's IP. You have to be still respectful of the security and all of those things. So, I was actually seeing some guy was actually using a free version of a model to be able to. The last thing you should do is copy paste your client's code there, right? And then kind of without your knowledge contribute that, right? So while all of these tools are there to be cliched and quote Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So basically, we should be able to use this very responsibly, and even within the organizations, that education is very important, and it still needs to be controlled and deployed like any other strategy, right? It is very important for
I
us
think
to
the challenge,
think about it that
especially
way.
from cybersecurity space, especially from data loss prevention, which is a big deal. You've seen from there are a lot of stories where even in US government, people have used LLMs and they cut and paste some policy documents into LLM and then asking some questions. I think that is a big issue, right?
That's
Especially when
right.
you're opening within the enterprise, you don't want to leak your client's data or your whatever, right? So
That is the biggest responsibility
and
you
I
have.
don't think we really have a very solid solution of how you uh, stop all that,
No, I
right?
agree. I
So
think, and especially when you are in this remote working environment and all, it further complicates the
exactly.
problem, right? It's very hard for you to put those controls. So it is extremely critical for us to continuously educate our team members of the do's and the don'ts, right? As you said, basically, what are perhaps some of the unintentional, I would say misuse of AI is where
Yeah.
you tend to use something that's not organization approved and without
No,
your
I see
knowledge.
it as a big problem, especially Jay, in startups where the controls are not in place. New startup, right? And you hire people, and then they just leak the code left, right, center into these LLM tools. There is no controls in place. It's a big problem
And
because
it's more so important in a consulting firm because you're working with multiple different clients, and
exactly.
it is very important that you are being responsible for that. That's your duty as an organization to make sure that you are protecting your client's interest. And it is even more critical for us to educate our own team members to be able to see how do you really do this in a responsible way so that we're able to take advantage of it. But it's like a knife, right? You are not able to use it well, you end up cutting yourself, right? So it's very important for you to take care of how to really use it responsibly, right? That's probably what I would say
Yeah.
is super important.
So great discussion. So Jay, thanks for joining.
Oh, my
I
pleasure.
hope we can have one more
It's
episode in the
always a
future on.
pleasure to hang out with Jay and you, be in person or on the web.
No, the pleasure was all mine, gentlemen. I really thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I hope it was useful, helpful, and always be happy to be back, rather.
So this is our first video episode because the previous episode were all mostly in the podcast format, and we just launched the last two episodes on YouTube essentially, right? So yeah, and you have been the first guest we invited you.
Okay, I feel very
Um,
privileged.
I hope we can have more discussions with your other teams. I would have loved to have Girish also,
Sure,
your co-founder on the episode. I'll try to reach out to him.
sure.
And yeah, thanks for joining, Dave.
My pleasure,
Bye,
team.
Subbu.
Thank you so much for having.
Bye.
Yeah,
Bye.
Bye.
bye, guys. See you.
Talk to you next week. Bye.